and welcome to the Intralingo World Lit podcast, where we explore the many ways of seeing and being in the world through books. I'm Lisa Carter, founder and creative director of Intralingo, and today I'm in conversation with the author Olja Knežević, with translator Ellen Elias-Bursac, and translator Paula Gordon. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, we're very glad to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. This is the first Montenegrin novel I have ever read, in English, of course, but I'm super excited to be chatting with all three of you. Yeah, so Olja, this is your fourth book, is that right? And
Yes.
the first in English?
Yes. Well, it's my fourth book, third novel, and my first novel I wrote in English, and of course, it sounds translated. It sounds. I mean, this one was actually translated professionally, and it doesn't sound translated. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't know how I did it. Why? I mean, I know why, because I was doing the MA at Birkbeck in London, the MA Creative Writing, so I was forced to write it in English, but I don't know how I wrote a novel in English. And then I had it translated back to my own language and then published actually in Montenegro and Croatia and the region of ex-Yugoslavia. But this one, Catherine the Great and the Small, won an award. It's my latest novel, and so it got to be professionally translated and published in the UK and also English speaking. I think everyone can order it, really.
Yes.
It's available here, yeah.
Yeah, it's available, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, great, wonderful. I mean, I'm really excited, happy, and the translation is really so amazing that I actually read it 2 more times in English.
Did you?
I never read it or even wrote it.
That's fantastic. Well, congratulations to both of you, Paula and Ellen. That's high praise.
Yes, it is. I'm just now at the very end. I decided I would read it again before.
Well, I've read the first third for today.
We spoke, and I'm on the last chapter actually, but I read the last paragraph before we started.
There's something about it, really, Paul and Ellen. I kept thinking, what did I add here? Because it's a first person narrative.
Mm-hmm.
She sounds so much stronger. She sounds more determined, but yet a bit more crazy also. Like she has this, I think, Balkan way of addressing the reader, but in a really good English. So it's a great combination.
Like she doesn't speak in an accent. That's really funny. That's very funny.
Well, when I was reading it just now, I read the first third just yesterday and today to prepare for our talk. And one of the things I realized that Paula initiated and I thought was really smart, especially in the first chapters, there's big time leaps between each chapter and big things have happened in the meanwhile. And so Paula suggested us putting in years to designate, where we are on the timeline. And I thought that was really smart. I think that a lot of those time hints are clear to somebody from the region because they'd read that and they'd know after a paragraph or two when it was going on just by what's happening. But people from outside the country can't possibly know those things. And so I thought that was really smart. So go for it, Paul.
Well, I just thought that it was, I wanted to know how old she was, how much time had passed. And, we sent you a timeline, Olja, and it was interesting. At the end, you were kind of like, well, let's just say a lot of time has passed, but which is fine, but it was helpful to know that, like to not really, at the beginning, I think it's important because you are following events and because they're in school, at some point, Ellen, you said, hasn't she graduated already? Doesn't she
Right.
going for an MA or something like that? You know,
Right.
just because we lost track of time at a certain point.
Well, that thing about the 80s versus the 90s is very
Yeah.
important for that part of the world. If you're
Right.
talking about the 80s, that's pre-war. If you're talking about the 90s, you're in the war. And
Right.
so making that clear also was really important.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for asking me about all the details and questions, because something that's for the readers from this region, oh, of course, they would know that
Yeah.
kind of gets a bit mixed. What are they talking about now? But yeah, so, oh, but even if you write, when you write a novel, you need to kind of you do a lot of math.
Yes.
You get carried away by the art and the soul of it, but then actually you need to also do the math and also like do the little apartments she's in. I had to have them kind of all figured out in my head, how many rooms does the grandma's apartment in this one. So it's not all, you know, higher spheres. There's a little bit of prosaics too.
Absolutely.
I think it's helpful because it places, even if subconsciously, it places the reader in a space. I mean, one thing I enjoyed about this novel, even if I don't picture everything in detail, I still really do have a sense of where they are. You know, there's, and it's not too much description though. I mean, it's enough to give you a sense of the kind of place it is without going into, you know, excruciating detail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So.
Yeah. So it sounds like it was a pretty close and incredible collaboration throughout to bring the novel into English.
It kept the lockdown doable, I think, because Paula and I were working so during those first winter months when things were the worst, you know, March and April, we were working very intensely together. And I think that really made it livable for me. Certainly.
Yeah, and also actually the lockdown made it doable for me because, you know, we all had travels planned and it occurred, and visits, you know, and it occurred to me that had all of that other stuff happened, it wouldn't be the same book, really, because
we would have slept a
all
lot
that
less.
time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, this year is strange, isn't it? It brings globally bad things, but personally you get a little gain that you otherwise wouldn't.
Right, a quieter life. It's true. At times, a quieter life is a benefit. It's true.
Yeah, definitely. So I absolutely have to ask this, Paula and Ellen, how did you divide up the translation? Was one section Paula's and one, because the book is divided into two. There's Catherine the Great and Catherine the Small. Is that how you did it, or how did
Paula,
you divide?
Why don't you do that?
Well, Ellen, first of all, I'm here because of Ellen. Ellen was asked first to translate the novel, and she, in my opinion, very generously offered to work on it with me as more of an editor. So the way we did it, and because of our schedules also, I was able to start. So I did the first draft of it all.
Yeah, I was working on something else when you were starting. That's right.
Yeah, and then I would send it to Ellen, and because we were kind of running out of time, I would send chunks to Ellen while I was still working, and she would send feedback to me on what I had translated and sent to her. And then I would glance through it. I would try not to obsess too much over changes. And I think it was smart, Ellen, you didn't track all of your changes. And I don't know whether that was inadvertent or on purpose, but it worked for me because it made me not think too hard.
Funny, I don't even remember. That's such a funny point. Yeah.
Who was what? You know, I would read it and I would say, oh, that sounds good. And I was like, for sure she changed that. And then I go back and like, oh, that was mine, you know. So there were, you know, it was a nice
think alike.
Well,
yeah, the way my perspective on the process was that I'd been absolutely overwhelmed by other projects leading up to that, too many books in too short a time. And I was feeling burned out, and that this book has a lot of ebullience. I mean, it's very energetic and emotional and has a wonderful, playful voice. And I was afraid that I wouldn't have it in me to bring that kind of energy to it. I was so exhausted. And I also was worried that I'd done too much lately. And so it's all beginning to sound the same, or at least I was beginning to sort of have my favorite word for translating acts, and I thought, no. Let me work with somebody else. So that was really the motivation when I went to you, Paula. Also, I just have enjoyed collaborations for that same reason too. Lately, I've done several collaborations, and I've found them quite refreshing. That they take me out of these kind of not ruts, but just automatic ways that I translate things, and I enjoy hearing somebody else's voice and thinking about it. But I have more experience translating fiction. Paula does. She's done some theater, but not a novel per se. So it worked well with her. She was interested in getting involved with this, and I was just so grateful to have someone to share it with. So once she had started doing the translation and I was following along with my editing sort of behind her, then I would make, they were suggestions, Paula, suggestions. And there was, there's always a hierarchy of suggestions. There's no, we're not going to do this, or we're going to do this instead, or what about this, sort of with a question mark, and sort of playing with things. And so she began incorporating some of those things as she was translating on and through the book. She was looking at my earlier corrections, and then those things were shaping what she did.
Yeah, that's
so
fascinating.
It was very, very much a full collaboration in every way. We were both completely involved. So in the editing, even though she'd translated and I edited, in the end, we both edited everything.
We were editing
over long conversations.
What was there. Yeah. No, that was good, because it does take, by the end, it's true. It's just what's on the page, and is it the right thing? And the other thing is that we read it out loud to each other. This was something that Ellen had suggested from another translator. So we did a few sessions where we would read straight through chapter.
The whole book. We went from start to finish.
And then
it did make a difference. It really did.
The one thing that happened is that we would read something that wasn't on the page. And then the other person would say, actually, you said this. You're like, oh yeah, that's better. It comes out of your mouth.
Yes.
Right.
In a way.
That's what writers should do. Also read aloud to themselves. But you get too lazy to do that. But that's really, like when I read this now before as a little exercise, to see how I sound to myself while I read. I was wanting to change. Oh, I know. After it's been even translated, I'm like, okay.
Well, but that's always true. I mean, anytime you pick it up, you suddenly go, "Ooh, I should have done that."
I know there are a few places I marked. It's like,
Well, that's so fascinating because, as I was reading it, I always have a little bit of the translator's brain myself still in the, as I'm reading. And there was such a consistency of voice throughout, even though the voice changes for Catherine as she is younger and older. But I couldn't help but puzzling. Okay, how did they do this? How did they divide this? But I think that intense collaboration, that true collaboration really comes through beautifully. Yeah.
It was a great pleasure. And Paula is such a good translator too. It wasn't like I had to schlep her along. I mean, she was absolutely in there 100% going for it. It was really exciting to work with.
Fantastic.
There was
I really something about myself lucky. Yeah.
I was going to say there just was something about the voice and also the granny. I feel like I had the people in mind. Even Milica, I did theater in high school, and there's a girl kind of like that. She's now a grandmother, so it's,
She survived.
She survived. But there was something, there were little pieces of each character that I kind of felt akin to.
We even sent each other links to people that reminded us of Sinisha, our image of Sinisha.
Oh, really?
It was so funny, and mine was so different than hers. It was just something I was watching at that particular moment. I thought, ooh, that's Sinisha.
Well, that would be incredible to see the differences, because we all create a different image in our mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, take us into the book. First, take us to when you decided to write the book, and then introduce us to Catherine the Great and the Small, if you would.
Yeah. I had my two previous novels. There's Milena. She's in her 20s, at the end of her 20s. There's Mrs. Black, Vale Black. She changed her name, also Montenegrin woman who changed her name and married an Englishman. She's like at the end of her 30s. And then someone asked me, so is there a third woman now coming? And I thought, yeah, why not? As I'm getting older, they should be getting older. And I was thinking, but what now? What? And then there was a scene happening in my real life, in my home.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wait, well, the scene was happening, like the real life was happening. And I was going, whoa, this is it, this is the novel. And I was running to my computer. And I wrote that scene as it was happening. But that scene never made it into a book because it's real. Mm-hmm. I'm not still at that level of depth that I can just do it. I couldn't, but I noticed that I had a voice. That voice with which it was written, first person, already had a distance that I personally couldn't have. But that voice came, like, I didn't even have to make a compilation of the people I knew, women I knew to build her. That voice brought everything. Seriously, it was a miracle. And I knew I started my third novel. And yeah, it's when you start, when you have the beginning, or like when it has really begun, and also somehow how to end it.
Okay.
And then in the meantime, I always say, okay, I can do this one in a year because it's going really well. But then you finish the first draft and you go back and you just go, oh my God, this has to go, Yeah, so Catherine is just someone who could have been my really good friend. I could have known her growing up, and I knew everything about her, even though it's all, invented. Mm-hmm. Nothing like that happened, but it all happened separately, I bet, and I swear on my life, in Montenegro, because I know the country so well. Mm-hmm. So it's my territory, and I love writing from my territory and about my territory, even though I lived in many other places, and I haven't lived in Montenegro. Yeah, first I
have to ask you this, Olya. Did you ever sell ice cream on the street? Because
no, but I wanted
the ice cream is so terrific.
So true.
I wanted to so much when I was young. I wanted to work during summer, but my father was a different kind of father. He was always like, no, you're going to study. You're going to be, no, there was something like he wouldn't let me. But I always saw those young girls of my age probably who would work during summer, selling ice cream, doing something. And I was so envious. Today, I'm envious of hairdressers, for example. It's like, there's something, I like that. I don't know. I think they have like a good life, good childhood. Like they stand outside in the street, meet people, get cash. I love that. You hear stories, you see people, like, what's better than that?
Yeah. So we're going to watch. Maybe your next character will be a hairdresser. Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, that would be maybe something for this, like, theater.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's
monologue of the hairdresser.
There you go. Yes.
Well, I've seen plays in barber shops, but I haven't yet seen a play in a hairdresser salon.
Yeah, that's not
True
a bad
enough.
idea.
Well, no, there is that play. Hang on. It takes place in a hairdresser shop. Fried Green Tomatoes?
Oh, maybe.
Oh,
Does
really?
it? Oh, I don't remember that.
I've seen it, but
Isn't
I've
that the-
forgotten.
Yeah, it's a,
Could be.
anyway. It's all just the two, at least the way I saw it, two barbers' chairs, two women hairdressers,
They talk.
and things going on out off stage and the
Mm.
conversation on stage.
Wow. I've
That's
only
all right.
seen the film, yeah.
It's one of those the 7 stock scenes, a barbershop.
Right.
For
Right?
sure.
Isn't there that?
Everything's been done, so.
Yes, exactly.
Anyway.
Exactly.
But it wasn't in Montenegro.
Yeah, no,
Definitely not.
I mean, we only just now changed the government after 30 years, so it's,
Yeah.
new things are gonna happen. Okay.
Happen. Exactly. Well, I would love for you to read a little bit to bring us right into the story. So,
Okay. I
mhm.
will. I'm not sure for how long because it's different when they read in English. So yeah.
Yeah, you decide a short bit, and then Paula and Ellen will read. Yeah.
Okay. So it's the beginning of chapter 3, and Katarina or Catherine and her best friend Milica are in Milica's room. Sanja ti je bila legenda, rekla mi je Milica i dodala mi još par mandarina iz kutije pored kreveta u njenoj sobi. Naravno da je umrla mlada kao i sve legende, a dosadne majke i očevi nadživjeći svoju djecu. Vidi šta je životna svrha moje ceci. Pravljenje zaliha za crne dane. Kašeti mandarina, raskomadane životinje po zamrzivačima. Čula sam da se na sanjenim časovima likovnog moglo pričati o svemu, o ljubavi, vezama, braku, filmovima, poeziji. Baš je fazon da nosiš to S kao privjesak. Miličina se nordijsko plava kosa, dužine kao u sirene, prosipala po krevetu, po meni, s kreveta padala na pod. U kosi kore od mandarina i ostaci od oštrenja crnog kreona za oči. Prije izlaska napolje, ništa od toga neće istresti iz te ogromne kose koju rijetko pere. Uvjerava me da mirisi otpadaka i masnoće odbijaju vaške. Dječaci ispred zgrade zvali su je Plavi anđeo. Nisu je interesovali ti paćenici. Bila je zaljubljena u glumce, u filmove, u Branda, Belmonda, Deona, u pjegavu, beskompromisnu Catherine Hepburn, u karakternu Anu Manjani s dlakama u nosu, u malo razroku Moniku Viti. Osjećam da pripadam tom svijetu, govorila mi je bez srama. I svima je tako, bez srama, govorila da od života hoće umjetnost, strast i slobodu. Ćao, ja sam Milica, rođena na potpuno krivoj paraleli. Tako se predstavljala u leksikonima. Sve sam njene riječi upijala. Njen je govor bio glamurozan i bogat, poput Hollywooda, gdje je stvarno i pripadala. Napamet je učila ženske monologe iz svih knjiga koje je čitala. Već se s 13 godina počela ozbiljno spremati za prijemni na Beogradskoj dramskoj akademiji. Gluma se može i sa 16 upisati, govorila je pravilnim izgovorom. Kupi još i K za tvoje ime, rekla mi je. Prejako ti je ime, Katarina. Odmah nakon Katarina mora ići velika. Moraš da porasteš do 1,80 m, moraš da budeš velika, poput tvrđave, muška ramena i velike sise. Smrdim li na znoj? Pitala sam je. Jesu li mi predlakave ruke? Savršena si, tješila me. Maybe stop here and then if you want you can read longer because I don't know, all they will hear, the listeners is like,
It's wonderful to hear.
And drive them insane.
It's wonderful to hear, but yeah, absolutely. Let's hear some of the English now.
How should we do this, Ellen?
Well, why don't we go up to where she stopped and then you can start and I'll take it from there.
Okay. Your Sonia was a legend, Milica said, and handed me 2 more mandarins from the crate next to her bed. Of course she died young, like all legends do. Boring mothers and fathers outlive their own children. Look at my mother's sole purpose in life, to create a nest egg for a rainy day. Crates of mandarins, dismembered animals, and freezers. I heard that in Sonia's art classes, kids could talk about anything, about love, relationships, marriage, films, poetry. You're a class act wearing that S around your neck. Milica's Nordic blonde hair, long like a mermaid's, spilled over the bed, over me, from the bed onto the floor. Mixed up in her hair were mandarin peels and shavings from sharpening her black eyeliners. She didn't try to shake any of it out of her hair when she went outside, and she rarely washed it. She assured me that the smells of these scraps and oils kept the lice away. The kids from the building called her the blonde angel. She called them rejects and wanted no part of them. She was in love with the movies, with actors, Brando, Belmondo, Delon, with the freckled, uncompromising Katharine Hepburn, with the character actress Anna Magnani and her nose hairs, with the slightly cross-eyed Monica Vitti. I feel like I belong in that world, she told me shamelessly. She told everyone to their faces, shamelessly, that what she wanted from life was art, passion, and freedom. Ciao, I'm Milica. I was born in an alternate universe. That's how she introduced herself in our class directory. I lapped up every word. Her manner of speaking was glamorous and rich like Hollywood, a place she really did belong to. She memorized the women's monologues from all the books she read. At 13, she was already seriously preparing for auditions to get into the Belgrade Academy of Dramatic Arts. One may enroll at 16 years of age, she said, with impeccable diction. You need a C, too, she told me, for your fabulous name, Catherine. And right after Catherine must come the Great. You must grow up to be 5'10". You have to be great like a fortress, shoulders like a man and great big tits. Do I have BO? I asked her. Are my arms too hairy? You are perfect, she assured me.
Okay, I think this is okay. Sinisha is afraid of that, as are all the boys. Show me your tits, Catherine the Great. I do believe they've grown. She didn't wait for me to pull up my shirt before pulling up her own. Look, mine are already sagging. They were not sagging, of course. She just wanted to show me her firm, round breasts again. You have nicer nipples, she said, and brushed her fingers over mine. Lesbos! All at once, her little brother Radosh jumped out from where he was hiding behind Milica's curtains. I'll tell your mothers you're feeling each other up and kissing on the lips. Shame on you, Milica said to him. Kati doesn't have a mother. Imagine what it would be like if we didn't have a mother. Radosh's chin trembled, his nostrils flared, and he tried hard not to cry. Don't, Mitzi, don't tease him, I said. But she kept going. What a crappy life that would be, eh? And on top of that, some idiot, someone like you now, comes along to accuse you and judge you. Radosh couldn't hold back his tears. He was already sobbing. Your crying means nothing to us except that you feel sorry for yourself. Apologize to Katerina. When she becomes Catherine the Great, she'll chop off your head. I consoled Radosh and told him he hadn't hurt my feelings. Good riddance to bad rubbish, said Milica, and turned my attention to our long-term goals. One way or another, we're going to ditch this backwoods town. You and me, kid. You can do anything. Remember that. This place will stunt your brain, and I don't intend to live my life with half a brain.
I swear it sounds better in English. I'm enjoying it.
I love that scene. That friendship is just so incredibly well portrayed right there in that one scene.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, to me, I was thinking about Catherine and Milica, and, you know, they're kind of the same side of, or different sides of the same coin, or maybe the opposite. But, you know, when we look at Milica and we learn about her, and she's dramatic, and, you know, she's larger than life and incredible. And Catherine, you know, especially at this time in her life, she's lost her mother and she's living with her granny, and she's lost her father, and she seems so much more down to earth. But in many ways, she is more of the heroine. She does become Catherine the Great, and Milica doesn't become all that she dreamt of.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Milica even says about two characters, you know, splitting one character into two. She talks about a Streetcar Named Desire, and she said
Yes.
they had to be cut in two. Like, this is one of the things I would change in the translation. Instead of cutting things up for the audience, I would say, like, cutting things up in bite-sized pieces, you know, for consumption.
Yeah,
And I really do feel like one of the things I liked about the novel is I felt like, Olya, you were telling us what you were doing the whole way through, and yet it still worked. You know, it's like, I don't know if you did this on purpose, but in so many places, it seems to me that the author is speaking. You know, if you already found a way to express yourself, express all of you. Don't bury anything. I mean, that to me is the really kernel of what you're doing in this book. There's so many things that are hard to read, not hard to imagine, because I think, at least I'm of a similar age as Katerina, the things are hard to remember. And yet they're out there. And I was so appreciative that you put, you know, even some of the most unpleasant things on the page.
Yeah. I become braver with every novel, going deeper into just expressing what I really also like think about. I can't just say what I really think, but what I think about, because Milena was more of a political thriller, and she was just out there. It was obvious it wasn't me. It was built around some affair in the politics of my country. So it was easier to go darkness, rape, sex trafficking. It was very political. Then Mrs. Black was kind of a bit like, whoa, fantasy world, is she going insane because of identity crisis? But I felt I was afraid of Catherine because she was so much like me. She was my age, and I knew her. She didn't have my life trajectory, but I, you know, kind of peril. So I was afraid. And now with my next book, I promised to myself, you have to go deep. You just go there, because the deeper you go, I really believe this, it becomes more universal. Because
yes, I think
writers from Montenegro are afraid that nobody cares about Montenegro. You know, it's kind of exotic, but not really. It's still in Europe. Not very interesting, very small market. What is this language? It's not Croatian, even it's not Serbian. What have they done? And so they reach for like some kind of Japanese stories, some crazy names. They try to get into trend, copy what's in. But I just think they should go deeper. Just go deeper, and then it becomes like universal. You see, you knew someone like Granny, you kind of knew someone like Milica. So yeah, I'm gonna go deeper next time. Even I already started something, and you know, I'm just now saying to myself, okay, you're writing this so far only for yourself. So, you know, don't cut anything, don't have boundaries, just go.
Yeah. It's hard to go that deep, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and I like fiction like that, you know. I don't really read genre after I stopped reading Agatha Christie. I didn't really go back to crime novels or romance or stuff like that. This is what I like reading, and this is what I sometimes miss. I wish there were more of that, you know. I mean, there are more and more women writers. That's amazing. That's really great. That's really great. And I love reading about women by women. I really enjoy it. So, and I think they should go deep. Yeah.
Yeah. Me too. And, you know, quite honestly, it's what I love about world literature is um, I am rather ignorant of Montenegro and the entire breaking apart of Yugoslavia because I was a similar age. It was not on my radar at the time. It's not an area of the world that I have spent any time in. But I could have been Catherine in that bedroom with her friend Milica. You know, I could have been Catherine when she went to Belgrade and went to university and, you know, a tragic first love. All of those things are about being human.
Mm.
You know, they're not about a place, they're about us as humans.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is
Yeah.
great about women writers, maybe, because I always remember how Virginia Woolf said, I'm, I'm a woman and I don't have my country, therefore the whole world is mine. Like, something like that. I'm really heavily paraphrasing. I don't even know what the original quote sounds like. But yeah, it really feels like that. I don't belong to any particular literature. I'm from Montenegro, but I don't live there. I live in Croatia, but I don't write Croatian language. And, you know, I lived in London for a long time, but I don't. I'm a translated author there.
Yeah.
But somehow I don't care. I feel so free. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's marvelous. You know, and I must say, Ellen and Paula, was it your idea to add the notes at the end of the English version where you gave us those lovely hints on pronunciation? Because I actually wanted that part at the beginning because of course I was obsessing over how do I say this name? But you gave us some of the socio-political, geopolitical context at the end, which for me as a reader was really important. How did you see that?
Ellen, I think that was your idea. We talked about possibly an actual timeline, you know, where it would be like the date and what grade she was in, sort of thing. But then the way you did it, Ellen, I think was more concise and sort of only what wasn't really explained in the text. You know, we talked about certain things that we could have put in, but we felt like they were explained enough in the text that, you know, to keep it as short as possible, I guess.
Well, there's this concept in translation discourse when we talk about what we do called stealth glossing, where you insert into the text a word or two that directs somebody to, I don't know, a popular song, so that you know this is a line from a popular song or something, so that and you don't want to have it sound like something the person wouldn't be saying, but it's got to be a little bit explanatory. But there's only so far you can go with that kind of thing, and you can't give a little history lecture in a paragraph in the middle of the novel. It just doesn't work because the protagonist would never be saying those things, and it just doesn't make any sense. So we started talking about putting something like that together at the end. I have this, when I'm asked about fidelity in a translation, I'm not one to stick, I generally stick to sentence length and mostly paragraph length and that kind of thing. But I don't feel particularly wedded to having a translation be literal bits and pieces the way they are, especially not word order within the sentence. I don't feel wedded to that particularly. But what I do like to think of in terms of fidelity is that the reader should know, and this is of course impossible like all fidelity, but the reader should know the same thing in another country that the reader domestically knew when they were reading the novel. And that's impossible because it's a whole cultural surround that's implied. But as far as I can take it in that direction, I take it. I mean, that's sort of my goal. And so that was part of making that possible by putting in that piece at the end.
There were a lot of songs in the original, a lot of songs and song lyrics and names of bands that ended up being omitted from the published book. And so the explanation at the end was quite a bit longer because there was a whole paragraph on the girl bands of the 1980s.
Well, not unironically,
Yeah.
there's a very famous Belgrade band called Catherine the Great. And it's Ekaterina Velika, and often shortened to EKV, EKV. And the funny thing for me is that I recently translated a novel by Ivana Bodrožić, where every chapter begins with a line from a title from one of the EKV songs. Then in here, there were all these EKV songs, a few of which are still in but mostly were taken out in the course of the editing. And now I'm working on something else where there's EKV songs. So it's really hilarious that EKV has just completely formed a whole generation. I mean, it's really...
the leader and the founder was something like Kurt Cobain or Jim Morrison of Yugoslavia.
Right.
Yeah.
I always think about...
He was also good looking, which helped. So, and he was like this, unhappy...
heroin addict.
Looking boy.
Heroin addict, but it was very heroin-y, that music. Like, for me, it was all Velvet Underground. That Velvet Underground and Nirvana, that was that whole... I become now very familiar with the music of EKV but it is Catherine the Great. That's the name of the band, which is perfect for this.
That is, and I guess, going back to the setting and the cultural things, references and what was happening in the world at the time, this book isn't about that, of course. It's a character novel, and yet all of those happenings impacted and affected Catherine. They are the context in which she grew up. And so having that there, particularly for English readers who may not be familiar, is really so informative and helpful. It helps us shape our understanding.
I love it. I love that.
Well, one issue that comes up with something like that is whether to put it at the beginning or the end.
Mm-hmm.
But the trouble with putting it at the beginning, we were able to sort of just hint at things by putting it at the end because you would have already read them. Whereas if you put it at the beginning, you have to kind of set it out like a history lesson. And that's, it becomes more sort of ponderous.
Mm-hmm. And more prominent, whereas in the novel, it is in the background, it's... Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I have two older sisters, and they both waited till each other finished reading it to start talking about it. But they both were kind of wondered, do they have the same experience of the novel as somebody who were familiar with the place? But it seems to me that they didn't really find it an obstacle in terms of, and what I said is that in fact the main character of the book is kind of oblivious herself. And so I feel like that wasn't such a big issue. I mean, it's nice to know what's going on because, as Ellen said, the reader of the book in the original, will know what was happening at that time, even if the protagonist doesn't. I guess in a sense that adds a bit of tension. They know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? They're reading it now. They know what happened.
To a foreign reader,
Yeah. So when certain names are mentioned, it's almost like you have bah, bah. You have this dramatic language. It's like, Archon,
Well, the question to ask your sisters is it okay for people to watch Hairspray who aren't from Baltimore? I mean, it's... It's perfectly fun to watch it, even though people from Baltimore obviously are going to see different things in it than all the rest of us. But
yeah, they finished the book. I mean, you
know what? They finished the book because so many books I have never finished, and they were on the best-selling list. They got this wonderful raving reviews, and I bought them. And was really mad because they were impenetrable. So they finished the book.
Yeah, no, it's good. One of my middle sister said that when she finished, she was a little bit sad you know, that she didn't have more to read. Like,
Uh-huh.
there wasn't going to be more
Yeah.
adventure.
That's a
I thought
very
that was
good
a really
measure of,
good compliment.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
a very good measure of success.
Oh,
yes.
it definitely is. Yeah, without a doubt. You know, I think another thing that you began talking about, Olya, when you introduced the book is, and that I particularly loved, is that, you know, in a way, this is a coming of age novel because the whole beginning part is Catherine the Small. She's a child, adolescence, young adulthood, but it's also a coming of middle age book
Yes.
in Catherine the
My
Great.
favorite age so far.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
know you were alluding to that, you know, in the trajectory of your own writing, in your own books. This was a reflection sort of your own stages, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about that because it's very unusual to have at least those two time periods in a character's life in a novel.
It's very unusual. I haven't come across, I don't, I read a lot, but you know, there's so many books, but I haven't come across many books on this age, like 40 to 60, or I don't know, 40 to 60 is like 50s in the middle now in my mind, and I'm 52, so you know what I want more books. I mean, I brushed upon it kind of. I was finishing up with it, but I want to write more and like read more about women in their middle age. And I think your youth, you I mean, we're always young and whatnot, but you're not really young anymore, right, when you're 50. But still, they say the second youth begins at 60. And it's like this middle is, I don't know, it's full of changes. You're changing every day. You change your perspective. You change how you view life, to the point that sometimes it's hard for me to write because I'm changing spiritually so much. Like I'm not very many things can make me mad. I distance myself quickly. I just think, okay, this is me. I'm at peace with myself. That's what matters. But it's not good for writing, you know, because you can't have this emotion in the whole novel, like, oh, I'm fine. You need maybe a bit darkness, rage, but I'm kind of losing it. I want to stay in touch with it. But on the other hand, I love this age because you're really, you know yourself, you know your place, and you're enjoying it. You know, I mean, I'm sure you know. You also feel, but I want more books about it too.
Yes.
I want to read about it.
Yeah.
I want to watch movies about it, you know, TV series. So, yeah, definitely what I have started now is definitely starting from that age directly. Yeah. And I'm keeping the beginning this time.
Oh, that's great. I can't wait to read it.
As I say, it's going to be done in a year. But you know, it's never.
That's a good thing to start with, that as the idea.
I'm curious, when you started writing Catherine the Great, where you started. I mean, from what you just said, that an incident was happening is when you started writing it.
Well, she was sitting in her room at the computer, and while the rest of her family was banging at her door.
So I was thinking that possibly that I'm calling it the prologue, had been a part of part 2 at one point, and that, you know, you sort of brought it back to the beginning to frame it. But in fact, that was the beginning of the book. That's so interesting.
That was the beginning of the book, except there was a specific scene and the dialogue and everything from behind the closed door. But I had to take it out. But then the general scene remained, because I like that the main character always is placed somewhere from where she's telling the story. I just love it. I don't know why. I just feel grounded, and now I can begin to, you know, fly. So yeah, it kind of stayed, but not really.
I thought it was more you know, that maybe you had written something straight through, and then,
Yeah.
you know, as a literary device, you moved it. It's really interesting that you began at the beginning, you know, at that beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You know, you always try, like, the saying goes that nobody reads more closely than the translator. So, you know, I'm always trying to think like, what is she doing here? What is this? Like, how am I going to make it work in English the way it works for me in the original?
Well,
A lot of that I think isn't conscious. Once you're doing it, it comes out that way. I mean, that's, I think, because the novel is well written, that the translation sounds well written, but you know, because we're not really changing anything.
Yeah, but
Only the language.
it's hard because what used to be Yugoslavia, we had Serbo-Croatian or Croato-Serbian, it was called, and I still use that language mostly. Now it's called either Montenegrin or Serbian or Croatian or Bosnian, but we all understand it. It has variations. So Milica speaks Serbian because she's an actress studying in Belgrade, and Catherine is speaking Montenegrin, but then there's like a specific dialect of my hometown when grandma speaks or when they sometimes, and they manage, I don't know how you manage it. I can hear it in the translation and it's all English. And you had these like small devices when you kind of hint that Milica speaks differently.
It was fun. That part was fun. I really enjoyed figuring out how it, or even just the gendarme and the whole that we really enjoyed those things. I mean, there are sometimes a person just skips that stuff, and I just hate skipping it because it's so engaging. I don't know. I like it anyway.
Well, I was really amazed. So
you know what's interesting is I work with Ljubomir Djurkovic, and he has a play. Pisac, in English, it's a family historian, written in 1979, and it takes place exactly the same time as when this novel starts, and they live in Drpe Mandic.
Oh my God!
Yeah, which is a part of town where she's wandering around. So I had in my head that, and also they speak in this old language, you know, they're old characters in that time, and they use the Montenegrin slang. So I did a lot of work before coming to you in terms of understanding some of those interjections and the dropped letters and things like that. So it's another reason why I felt like I could hear it.
Yeah, and that's, I don't really have much familiarity with the Montenegrin sort of colloquial usage, and so I was grateful to Paula for that. I know a lot about Zagreb colloquial usage, and even some about Bosnian colloquial use, but not Montenegrin.
Now you do.
Now I know a little bit more. Scratch the surface.
I was imagining that maybe Katarina, on her like wandering around, you know, after her mother dies, would like wander in and meet some of the characters in this this play. Yes.
Well, yeah, it's a small country, so
yeah, why not?
It's possible even our fiction characters.
Fictional. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Another idea.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. I love that one. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, you know, I really loved Catherine. I loved following her journey and seeing her. What I really loved about Catherine is this notion of, well, I think she said it towards, in that prologue we were just talking about, actually, where she says something again, and I'm going to paraphrase here because I don't have it in front of me, but, you know, that life never promised us anything specific, but we just get what we get, and I'm grateful for it all. And I think she even talks about her yellow sponge cake table, or the color of sponge cake. And I think that's what I loved about her so much, is like Catherine falls quite deeply in her early adulthood, you know, and it's not overly dramatized, but you know, it's pretty serious how she loses her way, but somehow she finds her way back, and it's not this heroic, then everything is wonderful. You know, she still goes along and there are still struggles and she's not always happy, but she finds happiness nevertheless.
She does. She starts to really love herself. I mean,
yes.
that's the greatest happiness, I think.
Yeah.
For a mature woman, that she's at good place with herself.
Mm-hmm.
And from there on, anything, as we say in Montenegrin, svemu sam naredna, which is like, okay, I'm standing here, so anything, bring it on. Yeah,
Bring it on.
Bring it on.
Ready
Yeah.
for anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it makes Catherine just so admirable and relatable, and
She's like a good friend, isn't she? I like that I
yes.
did that,
Mm.
because I want to, when I start writing, I always say to myself, okay, now you're going to bring the darkness. Life is hard. Bring the harshness of life. Bring it, you know, go there, the darkness. But I start writing and my heart kind of grows. I'm not saying I'm this great good person, but I just I love the characters, and I think I want them to kind of accept life and to fight it in a good way, to have this joy, because joy is underrated in literature.
Mm.
Everyone thinks it's cheap or it's so female, so it's kind of like everyone should be dark and evil and mean and oh, life is hard, but I don't know what happens, but when I start writing, I love to give joy to my characters, like it's going to be okay. And even if it doesn't end as a happy end, you see that they are okay. They have something, glowing from inside them. And I don't know, why not?
Why not? Yeah.
Why not? Who's to say that we shouldn't?
Yeah, but I mean, I think that is the admirable thing, and wouldn't we all love to live like that as well? You know, to find that joy inside.
It occurs to me that this idea of, you know, every good thing must be followed by a bad thing is something that I mean, maybe I'm that way because of my family and what my family's experience is. But, you know, the Holocaust and that sort of thing, where everything is, you know, just around the corner. But I think we learn that from what we read and from movies. You know, you're always, it's like when the girl goes in the shower in a horror movie, you're like, don't have a good time. You know, the killer is right around the corner. But I think we're bred with that expectation. And so that when you have this, Katerina says it, why should I be punished for a weekend?
Yes.
Just to suit me, just for my choosing. I'm not going to be punished.
You're always punished in literature.
Yes.
But in this book, paying attention, and I realized it, like always punished, and I didn't want her to be punished.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the differences of this novel. Even at the end, when she's left, I know I'm trying not to give anything away, but you know, it's like, okay, let's go. You know, just what you said.
Yeah.
I'm ready for anything.
Yeah.
You know, this.
Yeah, and that's a genuine ending for me. Yeah. So far.
So, you know, because she has done a lot of work to be ready for that. I mean, there's no denying all of that experience that she had, and she brings it all with her wherever she's going, which is nice.
Yeah. Well, I want to congratulate you all. Olya, of course, you for creating this incredible novel, to Paula and to Ellen for letting us read it in English. I'm so excited about that. I really can't wait to share it and for other people to read it as well. It's really, it's a piece of the world that few of us, as you say, know very well. And yet we know it intimately because Catherine really is very human. She's very us, and I appreciate that tremendously.
Oh, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking about it. It brings it all back.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, and as you say, the book is out. It is available everywhere in the English-speaking world, I believe, which is so exciting.
We can recommend bookshop.org,
Yes.
which is a competitor to Amazon in case one doesn't wish to buy it over Amazon for obvious
Yes,
reasons.
100%. And Intralingo has a tiny affiliate shop on bookshop.org. So I will include a link there. The bios, of course, of Olya, Paula, and Ellen will be in the show notes below so that you can learn more about their work. You can find them on social media. Stay connected. If you have questions or thoughts about the book after you read it, do put them in a comment or reach out to the author and translators directly. I think the best part of reading is then interacting with the author and translators to learn a little bit more like we're doing here. So thank you everyone for watching and for listening, and to all three of you, incredible thanks for being here today.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you.
Podcast. Beautiful thing you're doing. Thank you.
Lovely, my pleasure.